Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. For many people, hair loss is not just a side effect of cancer treatment. It can affect how we see ourselves, how others see us, and how much of our diagnosis we feel we have to share with the world before we are ready. And while some people choose to shave their heads, wear wigs, scarves, or hats, others may explore scalp cooling, also known as cold capping, as a way to try and preserve their hair during treatment. My guest today is a dear friend, Jen Fernandez. Jen was first diagnosed with stage 2 HER2-positive breast cancer in 2020. At that time, cold capping was not widely available, and she ended up losing her hair while undergoing chemotherapy. Then, just 3 years later, Jen experienced a local breast cancer recurrence. This time, she decided she did not want to lose her hair a second time if there was something she could try. So she chose cold capping. In today's conversation, Jen walks us through what cold capping really is like, the preparation, the discomfort, and the time commitment, the hair routine, and why, even though it was hard, she said she would do it again. This is not a conversation about vanity. This is a conversation about choice, control, dignity, and feeling like yourself during a time when so much feels out of your hands.
So how cold is cold? I'm not a wimp by any means. Like I can kind of deal with most things. It is so cold and it's, shocking to your body, and I remember reading beforehand that people said, if you can get through the first 15 or 20 minutes, it'll be okay.
Welcome to the conversation. I'm talking with my dear friend and Jen, who is not new to survivingbreastcancer.org. And we're so excited because, there are so many different directions we can take our conversation. Today, I really wanted to focus on the topic of cold capping, because this has been a topic that we hear from people of I got diagnosed with breast cancer. There's so many things racing through my head. I'm still trying to figure out my treatment plan. And a lot of times, we are put in situations where we need to make decisions in really short order with maybe not always having the most information or all of the information to make those decisions. And while sometimes, vanity plays its role in different places and times throughout a breast cancer diagnosis. But, talking about losing your hair, depending on, what that means to you, could be a really big decision and something that we need to navigate with. Okay, well, if you're going to be given chemotherapy, you definitely think you're going to be losing your hair. And I remind people, it's not just the hair on your head. You lose hair everywhere, your eyebrows, your nostrils, your arms, everywhere. So the pluses and minuses for all of that. And silver linings, the hair on your head. So there are technologies that have evolved, in the last 5 years even of, really figuring out how can we have people feel more comfortable aesthetically or physically, mentally as they're going through chemotherapy. So today we're talking about cold capping and, the decisions that kind of lead into it. And what I love is that, Jen, it breaks my heart that you were diagnosed with breast cancer twice. And the first time you lost your hair, the second time you're like, oh gosh, not again. So you have so much to tell and share and richness to let our listeners know about. I'm just so grateful that you're taking the time today to share your story, as someone I met through the cancer community, but as a dear friend who has gone through so much, and just seeing how you've navigated an early stage diagnosis, a recurrence, and then the decisions of, job transitions and going through, do I keep my hair? Do I not keep my hair? What is this all about? Having to navigate surgery again, all of these things. Big conversation today, but we're going to dive right in. So let me turn things over to you. Would you like to introduce yourself, where you're calling from, and maybe a little bit about your experience with breast cancer?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Jen Fernandez. I live south of Boston, and I was initially diagnosed with early stage, so stage 2 breast cancer in January of 2020. And so I was 39 years old at the time, so I had never had a mammogram. So it was kind of shocking. It was actually New Year's Day, and I rolled over and I can't lie, I wasn't doing a breast exam, and I kind of felt a lump. And I said, oh, this is weird. I don't think that was there yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
So long story short, I ended up, making an appointment, getting a mammogram, and was diagnosed that way. I did have to, have chemotherapy. And, at that time, cold capping wasn't really available at the cancer center that I went to. They did kind of mention it. It was kind of in passing, but I really feel like I was kind of fast tracked to getting chemo. It was like, by the time I got my diagnosis, the following week, I was getting chemotherapy, and I ended up having a hiccup. I know this isn't about this, but I had anaphylaxis to Taxol, which I had to be desensitized. So it kind of delayed the start of everything, but I did lose my hair. And in 2020, if everybody remembers, I went through chemo during COVID, at the beginning stages of COVID. And so the one blessing is that I didn't have to actually face anybody. I was home. Nobody saw anybody. So I kind of had, I didn't have to actually see anyone and have anyone kind of see what I was going through, from work or anything like that. So that was really nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to ask, I was in a similar boat where I had neoadjuvant chemotherapy. I got my diagnosis, stage 2B as well. And I feel like it was like the next week they were like, we're going to play support and then you're going to get chemotherapy. It was just like bam, bam. And yeah, I barely had time to breathe and understand what that meant.
It was very fast for me. And that actually gave me it made me really nervous because I was like, oh, they're really scared about me. Like they want to rush things through. So that's probably not good. I was just at that point very, really eager to get things moving. And so I did have, weekly Taxol times 12 weeks. And I had that along with Herceptin and Perjeta because I should have mentioned this before, but I'm HER2 positive, hormone negative. And I did have genetic testing done and that was all negatives. So it's not like I had and I had no family history.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I lost my hair. It was COVID.
Right.
And so, I ended up having a lumpectomy. Actually, I had surgery the week that they allowed surgeries to resume in hospitals during COVID. So I really didn't have a lot of options. My breast surgeon said, I'm not keeping you in the hospital overnight because there's a bunch of COVID patients here and I don't want to do that to you. So if you choose to have a mastectomy down the road, that's fine. But we're doing a lumpectomy. And I said, okay, I don't care. And then I had radiation and finished Herceptin and Perjeta and was doing really well. And then that about 3 years after my initial diagnosis, so in January of 2023, I did notice when I was getting out of the shower, like a dimple on my breast, which was the same side that I had my original cancer on. And I was like, oh, is that a shadow? It was hard for me to tell. And, I did feel a lump, really close to where my original cancer was.
Were you getting mammograms in between, like in the 2 years or 3 years leading up to that second lump?
It was.
You were. Okay.
So I was alternating MRIs and mammograms. And I think I had my MRI in September. And I remember that I went for my yearly gynecologist appointment. It was close to Christmas. So I feel like it was a couple of weeks before Christmas. And she did a very thorough breast exam. And then this lump kind of showed up. I remember it was like, because I was changing jobs. So it was like my second to last day of work. So it was like the second week of January. So that's how quickly I think things changed because I was like, this wasn't there before. This is very
You in January are not doing well.
I know. So, I ended up, getting in. I had messaged my oncologist, got seen, ended up it was like kind of, deja vu. It was all happening again, this very similarly, having the mammogram and then the ultrasound and then the radiologist, saying like, well, you have a mass that needs to be biopsied. And I feel like you can tell they look at you and it's like, I think they know when things look like malignancy. Right. And then they ended up doing the biopsy that same day. So I feel like once again, I was like, they're really worried about me. They're really concerned about me. And so I ended up, and this was kind of crazy too. I ended up seeing the results on my chart. They came up before my oncologist got a chance to see them and let me know. So I saw that it was the same exact cancer as last time.
Wow.
It was HER2 positive, hormone negative. And so I ended up needing chemotherapy again. Luckily, it was a local recurrence. I had to have a bone scan and a CAT scan of my, abdomen and pelvis, and that was all negative. And my oncologist did say that I needed a more aggressive chemotherapy. I needed TCHP, which is Taxotere, carboplatin, Herceptin, and Perjeta. And at
So
this
did you do the
time,
Herceptin and the Perjeta again?
again,
With
yeah,
this?
because I was
Okay.
HER2 positive again. And so she did say now they have Paxman cold capping symptom. I don't even know.
Facilities or
Yeah, like the machines at the
okay.
facility. And so I said, you know what? I honestly lost my hair once. I really don't want to do it again because it takes a while and it's upsetting to lose your hair. I mean, I've
Completely.
done it.
Completely. Right.
I
You've been
know
there,
that
done that. You're like, yes.
I'm like, I don't really want to do this again. I mean, and so I really didn't. I was like, you know what? I think I am open to trying it. And so that's kind of how that whole thing started, like in terms of like my history. I know I probably rambled on longer than you
No, no,
probably
no.
wanted me
No, no,
to, but that
you're
was,
great.
it
No,
gives
I
you like a
appreciate this.
background of, kind of how I ended up, my background of breast cancer. So.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I know every time we tell our story, I feel like it opens up wounds, but it also can be incredibly healing for us to just, again, get that off our chest and let other people know, like, hey, I've been there. Now I'm still talking about my story and look how far I've come and what I've been able to do and give hope to our listeners as well. So backing up to January of 2020, when you found out that you had your initial diagnosis and you were going to be doing chemotherapy, let's linger on like the hair piece. Were you thinking about like, oh gosh, I'm going to lose my hair? And was that like a concern or was it just like part of the process? Or what was kind of going through your mind? It was like, okay, they're fast tracking me and we need to like kill the cancer.
I think that was really it. I really didn't give a whole lot of thought to my care. I think initially I was just like, am I going to die?
Right. Yeah.
And because it's shocking, you're kind of like, I really thought I was healthy and I lived a healthy lifestyle. I exercised probably too much. And, I thought I took pretty good care of myself. And so I think at that time I was just more in, kind of shock or I don't even want to say denial, but I was just like, we need to start treatment. Like, I don't want to delay anything because even I remember they had mentioned cold capping. They said, well, it might take some time. I said, I don't want to, I don't even want to wait. We just need to like get things started. So I think I was like less concerned about my hair at
Hmm.
that point. I think people think like, all right, I'll lose my hair. And I think it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to experience it. I think it's
Yeah.
very hard when you lose hair in clumps.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I lost my hair. I remember like a split second thinking, do I want to consider cold capping? And do I want to like go and try on a whole bunch of different wigs? Like what do I need to make myself feel good? Because cancer is going to deplete so much. So like outside of the ice cream, like what do I need to feel good about myself? And I just, after the roller coaster and talking to my now husband, it was like, we're going to be going through so much and we don't know the side effects. This is new territory for us. I just don't want one more thing I have to manage. To me, it seemed almost so overwhelming to learn how to potentially protect the hair follicles for some percentage of saving my hair that wasn't guaranteed. And I'm glad it was an option and maybe presented, but I was kind of struggling with like, you know what? I'm going to lose my hair. We're going to shave it off. And like, it's just one less thing to have to deal with. The timing for me, I was diagnosed when all of this was happening, it was like in October. And so I had like 6 months of treatment in the winter. I was like, no worries. I got my hat. I'm wearing my hat all the time. Like, really, people aren't going to notice. And so, I think it's always a personal decision and what you feel most comfortable with.
Exactly. I think I was just, just overwhelmed. And I don't think it was, I think if I wanted to do it, I think I needed to kind of do it myself, get
Yes,
the ice packs and change it. And I was just like, yeah, I don't see myself doing that.
exactly. Exactly. So the second time around, I'm very curious because so much has changed, even in your experience from 2020 to 2023. And then, at the time of this recording too, I'm sure there's still additional like technologies and things that are happening and advances that are happening. So tell me a little bit about like cold capping and what that experience entailed from like, okay, you're interested. Did your nurses help you connect with them? Was there someone from the Paxman team to like connect with you? What would someone expect?
Yeah. So I was very familiar with my oncologist. I had a relationship with her for 3 years prior to this. And so she did tell me, she did say, we have the machines now. So I was treated at Dana-Farber. And it was one of the satellite locations closer to my home. And so she did say they have them. If you are interested, I can have you, I can give you the information. We do have a nurse here that can fit you for the cap. So there are different sizes. I'm not even really sure if it's like small, medium, and large, but they make sure that it's really snug against your scalp. And then the other piece, so I did do that. I had the appointment with the nurse. She had me try on the cap, which, the cap itself is, it kind of looks like, almost like an ice pack that's, on your head. It's blue, and there's like a big, tube coming out that connects to the machines that kind of pumps the cold air and keeps it cold while you're wearing the cap. And then, so that's really what they fit to your head. And then there's like a gray, like insulator cap that they put on over that like is tightened. And that's like, it has like a chin strap to kind of hold it close to your head. And so, I got the information, and then they say, well, it's really not covered by insurance. So here's the information. Like they said for me to call the number and then pay for it. And then at that time, they would get it to me within a day or two. And it was very, shipped right away. I was able to get it before my first chemo, because that was
So the
thing.
cap was like what they shipped?
They ship, yeah. So they actually have like a kit, and it's like a little zip up little kit thing, and it has the caps in there. It comes with their brand shampoo and conditioner, so Paxman shampoo and conditioner, and then a brush that I actually use to this day. I really like it, and then also I think maybe like a spray bottle or something. I honestly forget. Those are like the big things, the shampoo and conditioner, and then like the cap and the hairbrush. So they tell you, and then also when I was given the pamphlet by the nurse, they said, it's recommended you look on their website. They have a lot of videos on how to apply the cap, what to do, how to care for your hair while you're undergoing treatment, and they also have like a Facebook group that you can join, which, I remember like perusing it. I joined it, and you could like search and look back at some of the questions asked. And actually there was, Paxman representatives or whoever was on that Facebook page answering questions.
That's great.
And then linking to different videos. So I did find them super helpful. I did do a lot of research and reading about things. The other thing I should mention is that for the chemotherapy regimen that I had, I knew that, cold capping was, did have potentially a good success rate, where I know others, it's less. So
Yes.
The website itself does have different treatment regimens and how much hair you're expected to keep while you're undergoing chemotherapy while using the cold cap.
That's true. Because even with chemotherapy, there's so many different classes of drugs that people are going to be taking. And so how that interacts with your cells and your hair follicles, and then the technology of the cold capping itself. So that's really good to point out.
The other thing with the cold capping too is, and I don't want to scare anybody, but I'm sure people see this. I remember reading about Taxotere, and some people say that, if you lose your hair with that specific medication, some people never get, like their hair doesn't grow back. And so I was really kind of paranoid about that. I think it's probably like a very low incidence, but still I was like, oh, I don't want to go there. And the other thing that cold capping, even if you do lose your hair, one of the things that they say, or lose some of your hair, that your hair grows back faster when you use the cold capping. That's one of the things that they say.
And did you experience that, having both experiences of not cold capping initially, and what that process was like to get your hair to grow back versus, with the cold cap?
I think so. I mean, I will say I did not lose a lot of hair. I did shed, it's one of the things is, when you think about cold capping, it's, everybody sheds hair every day, right? You wash your hair and then you lose a little hair. And then when you brush your hair, you might, lose some. And so when you are using cold capping, you will be losing more hair than you normally do. And so sometimes it's almost like wow, I'm losing a lot of hair, but you feel like you still have a good amount of hair in your head. And so I think I actually was very lucky in the fact that I actually probably lost about, I would say 20% of my hair, maybe 25. I mean, it's hard to put it into, numbers, but I feel like, so I only had one little spot on the top of my head that was actually like a little bald spot. It was like right here on my part and it filled in really quickly. So I do think that probably I would say, but
Yeah.
I also didn't have, like, I didn't lose so much hair that I would have really noticed how fast it grew back.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I remember when my hair was growing back, not cold capping, it was just growing back. And it grew back at like different stages and phases. And I was like, oh my God, what if I'm going to have this like perpetual bald spot? Because it was coming in so patchy. And I was like, okay, this just looks awful. I'd rather be completely bald or have like my little pixie haircut than this like, I don't know. I got really worried. I was like, oh God, what if this like area back here never like comes back in?
And I feel like, I mean, that's very interesting you say that because I remember when I lost my hair the first time and it was growing back, my hair's like very straight. I mean, it's straight. And I remember I had like a little like wave and curl and I was like, kind of like this, and it's just like
Yes,
comes
the
back
chemo curl,
different.
absolutely, yes,
And you're like, where did this come from?
it's super soft.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I recall at some point with cold capping is, like, the prep you need in order to, like, go through this process, and I don't know if it's still true today, but I think at some point you needed to have, like, the cold cap on multiple hours before even starting your treatment and then keeping it on for multiple hours after your treatment. Was that your case? Is that still part of the process?
It is.
It is,
And
okay.
so I will say I did watch all the videos. So I would say if anybody is interested in doing this, I think it's, their website is great. They have a lot of different types of videos. And I think they even talk about, different types of hair, and how to apply the cap. And so one
And
of
you
the
apply
things
the
that
cap yourself? Sorry to interrupt, but you apply the cap yourself, or does your nurse
I,
help you when you're there?
both. But I actually had my husband, he would come with me. And so I like told him, I knew what to do because one of the things they actually recommend is bring the conditioner that's in the pack with you and then put it like on your hair so that the cap doesn't, because it gets so cold that you don't want it to pull your hair and like, especially when it's like frozen, like essentially like could freeze to your hair. So they say to put like conditioner just to like kind of protect the hair from from
Like a
sticking
layer.
to the cap.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I would, get up and I would go into the bathroom there. I'd bring my kit with me and I would, put the conditioner all over my hair and then put the cap on like snugly. Like you want to make sure it's, like, covering like your hair. You don't want to have it starting here. You know what I mean?
Right,
You want
right,
it to
yeah.
cover your
Like
whole
at your
hair.
hairline and where you're
Exactly.
exactly.
And so, and then, we'd go back to my chair and then the nurse would, and my husband, we would put the insulator cap on and then they would tighten it. So there's little
Mm,
like Velcro things on the sides. There's a chin strap. And so you want it essentially keeps the cap really close to your scalp. Right. So it's
okay.
kind of tight. The other thing I should mention is I remember reading on like Facebook pages and stuff is that the cap here, it's close to your forehead. So sometimes it's like touching your forehead. And so
Mm,
people say like, that's really cold. So
mm,
people would say they either put like a panty liner
mm.
or like gauze there to protect the forehead.
That's smart.
Like,
Yes.
so I remember my first time, I think I used like a panty liner and I like stuck it to my forehead and then and
You do what you
then,
gotta do.
hey,
Absolutely.
listen,
Yeah.
and so I, had everything applied and I remember I was like, okay. And I will say, I think the nurses, they would give me Ativan and I think it was right before I put the cap on. So it was like, they timed it because just to kind of take the edge off, I think, and they knew
Mhm.
it was kind of painful. I will say at the time, my nurse, like, so it was kind of new to the site that I was getting my chemo. And I remember nurses would come over and they'd want to like watch how I put the cap on. And so I feel like it was very educational for a lot of people.
Yes.
But my specific chemo regimen, and this is actually on their website too, the Paxman website, I had to have it on for an hour before chemo started and then for 90 minutes after. So I remember I was wearing the cap for a total of 4 hours. So it does extend your appointments
I was going to say,
that you're
is
there.
that time built into your infusion time? Like they know that you're coming early because you need to put on the cap and they know that you're going to stay afterwards. I want to take a quick moment and tell you something I'm really excited about. You can now download the survivingbreastcancer.org app directly from the App Store or Google Play. Just search for survivingbreastcancer.org. It is completely free to download, and inside you will have access to all of our support groups, educational programs and webinars, all of our blog content and articles, podcast episodes, and community features to connect with others who understand what you're going through. Everything in one place, because navigating breast cancer shouldn't require 15 open browser tabs. Download the app today.
Yeah. So they had I remember just looking at an order and stuff. It was so when you look at your appointments, in your My Chart or whatever, it would say, Paxman, it was scheduled in there. So I think this order was there. So this way they knew to put the machine in the bay, in the cubby, because they'd have to, I think also it had to be plugged in for however long before starting, so that this way they knew, because I think it has to get cold. The water, in that machine.
So how cold is cold? Are you I can't, I don't even know. I live in Boston too. We deal with winters, but how cold is cold for 4 hours on your head?
I cannot
Headaches? Did you get
sugarcoat this.
headaches?
I did.
You did get headaches?
I did. It's shocking how cold it is. I'm not a wimp by any means. I can kind of deal with most things. And honestly, I was it is so cold, and it's so shocking to your body, and I remember reading beforehand that people said, if you can get through the first 15 or 20 minutes, it'll be okay. You're either your head gets used to the cold, or you become numb, or something, but
you take more Ativan, you do whatever you have to do.
It's not as bad, right? So I remember I would just sit there and I would kind of grip the seat or and just know, okay, breathe through it. The nurses were really good. They would bring me warm blankets, and it's really cold. It's hard to explain because no one really just dips their head in ice water, right? And just keeps it there.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say that because of, the cap being on and tight, I feel like I would get a headache. And it was probably a combination of the cold, but also the fact that it was, this thing was squeezing my head, for so long. So it's doable. But it's
you clearly
definitely
did it,
good to prepare yourself.
Absolutely.
Well, also, I knew that it was paid for. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was committed to it. I was okay, 1 down, 5 more to go. Right. That's how I was kind of approaching it. I was I did it once. I can do it again, and so that's how I got through it.
I'm curious about this brush. What was special about this brush that they gave you? And what other lifestyle changes or behaviors impacted not just managing anything related to chemotherapy, because we're not really focusing on right now all the side effects and just managing chemo, but specifically with cold capping, were there other things that kind of changed your day-to-day routine?
Oh, 100%. I will say that it is a commitment. It is something that is, I don't want to say it's difficult, but in order to have it be successful, you really have to follow their rules, right? So I washed my hair once a week. I used, I wouldn't say cold water, but it was cool. It wasn't warm, which I love hot showers, I really do.
Too.
And so I would, and it was you can't really brush your hair, regular, you have to literally baby it. So I would hold my hair at the root and then brush it down, so I didn't want to put any tension at all on my hair follicles. And then they tell you no ponytails, which I know my hair is down right now, but I am the queen of ponytails. I always have my hair in a ponytail. And so I bought myself silk scrunchies from Amazon.
Okay.
And I would do a kind of a side braid. So I would just, and it was very loose braid, and I would just keep it like that just to prevent it from getting tangled.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just wanted to help it that way. And that was the way that it was. I know I mentioned that I would put conditioner on my hair. So my time frame was like the day of chemo. I obviously felt really crappy. I was tired. So when I would go home, I would, I wouldn't shower. Also, I had the Neulasta
Mm-hmm.
on pump thing. And so the following day after I took the Neulasta off, then I would shower. So I would because I hated the feel of my hair with the conditioner in it, and then that was like the day that I washed my hair, that day
Exactly.
every
Yeah.
week. And that was to continue throughout treatment. And then they tell you to continue this type of behavior with your hair until you resume normal shedding of your hair. And it lasted for a very long time. I feel like I was still shedding, I want to say 3 or 4 months after stopping chemo. So I
Really?
had to, I could gradually, I feel like it would kind of come down a little bit less, but I would start to wash my hair maybe twice a week, and I would, kind of do a little bit of a different ponytail. And so I could gradually feel like, I was getting there, but it took a while, longer than I thought.
Yeah. Was that part of any of like the education materials or in the videos? Like, did you know in advance that that was going to be part of the piece?
I did not. I mean, so that was kind of surprising to me. I remember when I finished my last chemo, I remember I had no hair anywhere else except for my head. It was kind of funny. No eyebrows, no eyelashes, nothing, but I had hair in my head. So I would try to my best to draw my eyebrows in, and really wasn't good at it, but just to, kind of make myself look not crazy
Yeah.
without the eyebrows. But I remember finishing chemo and feeling like I was losing a lot of hair. I was like, wow, I'm losing kind of more than I did during treatment. And just, because we would brush gently and then you'd see the more hair on
Yes.
the brush. And that's when I kind of noticed that I had a little right here, a little bald spot,
Yeah.
which filled in quickly. And honestly, nobody could see it because when you're looking at somebody, you're not looking at the top of their head.
Sure.
Unless somebody's very tall and they
Very
were
tall.
standing
Sure.
above me.
But I remember too, also losing my hair. And, I think in my head, I'm like, oh, we finished chemo. So now the hair should start growing back immediately. Right. And then it's like, no, these drugs are still in your system for quite some time. And even though I wasn't getting treatment anymore, I think that's when I started losing my eyebrows and eyelashes was towards the end. And so even though the little baby hairs were starting to grow back, I was still shedding in other areas. And so,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it is weird the way things happen. As I remember, yeah, same thing, the eyelashes and, come later. You lose them later. But yeah, so I
So you
will say,
survived all
I
5.
survived
Yes.
my 6 cycles. So I did 6 times. And, I am glad that I did it. I will
Yeah.
say I had started, I think I said this at the beginning. I had just started a new job at the time when I was diagnosed. So I was leaving my other job. I noticed the lump slash
Mm-hmm.
dimple. And then by the time I could get in and get an appointment, it was my second day of my new job when I
Wow.
had my mammogram and then biopsy. And I was like, this is horrible. And so, my job is mainly remote. And so I was like, how am I going to do this? I just thought to myself, this would make it easier if I can at least, because I don't really care telling people what I'm going through, but I don't like to draw attention to myself.
Right.
I don't,
Right.
I'm not one to just tell everybody, hey, so
Yeah.
I was like, it would be really nice to kind of look like I am not going through something like this.
Absolutely. I remember, surprisingly, during one of my meetings at work, and again, I decided to shave my head because I was shedding so much, and I thought it was going to be awful. I mean, it was awful to have to lose your hair, but I was so annoyed about the shedding that I was like, okay, we're just finding a barber shop around the corner. This just needs to go. But then, I don't know why I was expecting more support per se, but I think when showed up with my bald head, for me was being confident of look what I did and I'm strong and I'm okay and I'm going through this. I feel like people weren't expecting that. And it was almost harder for people to make eye contact or to take me seriously or to, when you're in a work environment too, it's awkward because you had hair. And so, I think some of just that the society issues, I think are very, kind of
I
challenging.
think people don't know what to say, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, it's okay. You could ask me, like,
Right,
are you doing
right.
okay? But yeah, no, I luckily didn't have to face anybody until like later. So my hair was kind of, in like this weird mullet type thing.
Yeah.
But I agree. It is hard, for people to know what to say. I think it makes them
Exactly.
uncomfortable. And it's like, well, I'm not uncomfortable. So why are you uncomfortable?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I know. I was trying to rock the like red lipstick and like the rock star style until like I started losing the eyebrows and eyelashes. But I was like, oh no, we're just looking hardcore.
I think that's harder. I think when you lose your eyebrows,
Yes.
I feel like your face looks so different. It's like,
Completely.
I don't know. I feel like now I look sick. Like I think when you have eyebrows and, you're bald, it's like, oh, okay, you still look like kind of healthy. Yeah, obviously you're bald, but I think the eyebrows is like when they're gone and it looks very different.
And my eyes, I think, were very tired and fatigued because you've been going through treatment. So I feel like I had like bags under my eyes. I was pale. Like it just was not a good
Very
look.
pale, very
So,
pale.
yeah.
I remember my face looked just like very pale both times, obviously, but just like I feel like it looked kind of like puffy. I just feel like I didn't
I read like
look
Tamed
well.
Water. I was just like, ugh. Oh, the life. Jen, this has been such a great conversation. I appreciate you literally walking us through like not just a diagnosis, a second diagnosis, but then navigating like your experience with trying to preserve your hair through cold capping. And I think so many times we have questions and we don't know. And so you just being so open and detailed about this, I know is so valuable. I really appreciate you sharing all of this with our community.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. I mean, I know I probably said it sounded scary, but I would 100% do it again. I think it was really nice to kind of feel like I had control of something in a situation where you really have no control over things that are happening. And then just kind of looking like trying to keep things as normal as possible, So I would do it again.
Amazing. We'll end on that note. I appreciate that. A good testament right there. Thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Bye.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400 plus programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.